Welcome, Nebraska fans, to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. We're back here on a Sunday morning, the morning after Malachi Coleman has committed to the Huskers, and we're going to offer some thoughts on this. Once again, my name is Chris Peterson of Husker Big Red, and with me, as always, is my co-host Danny Gillette. And Danny, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. I've never been excited as I am until for actually the past couple of years. Thomas Fedoni was the last time I was this excited about a commitment, and boy, what a victory this was for Nebraska on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, definitely a big victory for the Huskers and a big victory for Mickey Joseph, who is the main reason that Malachi Coleman is a Cornhusker. It did make this commitment. Without him, I don't think Nebraska really would have been involved in this race. That's what Malachi's said multiple times. So I mean, do you think that this is going to help Mickey Joseph in his quest to become the next head coach, permanent head
Yeah,
coach?
yes, 100%. Because one of the biggest gripes about the program was their lack of keeping talent in state, and now they have the most talented player in the state as well as one of the most talented players in the country. I do think this helps his case quite a bit because, if nothing else, this shows that he's a damn good recruiter. We knew that already, but this is just more evidence as to why.
Yeah, I mean Malachi Coleman is ranked 65th overall. According to the On3 consensus rankings, he just got another ratings boost. 6'5", 190 pounds. He's a dynamic athlete. Can play wide receiver. He can play edge. I think he's probably going to play wide receiver, but either way, he's a guy that's going to make a big impact on this program. I think right away, and he's the type of talent. I mean, really, Nebraska has not had very many receivers, with this type of ability before.
And when you look at, there's a line of thinking to where Trey Palmer may be headed for the draft sooner rather than later. And when you look at the 2023 class, you have O'Marion Miller and Malachi Coleman. That is not a bad duo at all.
Yeah, and I do think Nebraska is going to need, Malachi Coleman to contribute because Trey Palmer is definitely not going to be back next year. There's no way. This is his fourth year. He's having one of the best seasons in college football. I definitely think he's going to put his name in the ring to, go to the NFL. I mean, it just really, I mean, maybe if, Mickey's coming back and he could convince him, if Casey Thompson's back, but I really don't see, Trey Palmer, after this season, I would think he would strike while the iron's hot.
And not to go too far off the course here, but this would be the second year in a row, should Palmer go to the NFL, that Nebraska has put a receiver in the NFL. Smoritori, obviously he was with the program last year. He's now with the Packers. And, Trey Palmer, he is going to get drafted. He's a dynamic playmaker. And, this is a notch in the belt for the Nebraska football program. I mean, that's always been one of the biggest things. We have the talent that can make an impact in the NFL. It's just about getting the most out of them at the college level. But in any event, this Coleman commitment is a huge one. I mean, I think it signifies just how good Mickey Joseph is in recruiting, and I think it signifies, the relationships he has with his recruits. And I think whatever his recruiting strategy is, kids are buying into it, and it's working. I mean, just look at the names that he's been able to even get to campus here in the relatively short time he has been here. I mean, he was having Louisiana kids for visits in June. So I mean, there is something to the notion that Mickey Joseph is one of the best recruiters and coaches in college football.
Yeah, I mean, he really, before he even became the head coach, he had a huge hand in, building this class and, recruiting a lot of these kids. Like you said, O'Marion Miller. I mean, almost every kid that's still part of the class has, had Mickey as, one of the two primary recruiters. And if he wasn't the primary recruiter, he's really been reaching out and developing those relationships. And it's just, he's a strong leader, and, the players want to play for him. And he's proven, especially as a wide receivers coach, it's a little bit different recruiting, for the entire roster, but we've seen that he has a more competent strategy than Scott Frost ever did, he just never really developed a strategy. It didn't seem like, or didn't stick with one. And, Mickey is really focusing on the state of Nebraska. I mean, we've seen him, make a lot of offers, going out even in the 2023 class and 2024, 2025. He's building those relationships, and they're also out there, trying to flip some kids. Arnold Barnes kid that Iowa has also offered. Now Nebraska was the first Power 5 to offer him, and from Louisiana. So he's another one that the Huskers are trying to add to this 2023 class, which now with Malachi Coleman's commitment, it ranks 38th, in the 24/7 composite team rankings, which it's not obviously where Nebraska wants to be, but I think they've only got 14 commitments, which is, you have to consider that too. But, legitimately, Malachi Coleman coming in as a freshman, he may be the most talented wide receiver Nebraska has ever had. I mean, I followed the program since I've been a little kid. I know they've had a lot of talented receivers, but I don't know if anybody with this much, raw ability. I mean, if you've seen this kid play, I mean, he's a difference maker. You look at talking about throwing the ball up for Trey Palmer. I mean, the thing is Malachi Coleman. Yeah, he can burn people, but he doesn't even have to do that because if you just get the ball in his direction, he's going to make things happen with it. And then he's the kind of guy who can take a 5-yard slant pass and turn it into 60. And those are the kind of guys that you need, and Nebraska just hasn't had enough of those over the years.
Coleman's run after the catch ability is particularly impressive. I mean, especially for a guy his size. I mean, I was watching some of his highlights the other day, and he was just able to turn on the jets on a dime, and he made it look so easy. And it's just really incredible what he can do. And I know there's been some rumors about him, not trying hard or whatever. Well, I mean, listen. I'm just going to ignore the bullshit and let Mickey do his job. I'm not worried about any of that. I mean, I'm not buying into the rumors and all that stuff. I'm just happy he's here. I don't really care about what he did in high school in terms of, that sort of stuff. Change of scenery. I mean, now he's playing for Mickey Joseph. This is the big leagues. And, I'm I'm curious to see what he'll be able to do.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if, obviously, like I said, you have to get to signing day. Just because you get the kid committed doesn't mean that it's over. And I think that's why, Miami canceled his visit. They thought he was going to be somewhat committed to Nebraska. And I think they can see if Mickey Joseph is going to be either the head coach or back as an assistant, I don't think there's, that much to worry about. But if Mickey is not back as part of the staff, then I do think that there is going to be some concern, so I'm interested to see how that kind of plays out over the next couple of months. Like, I do think this is a big commitment, but I also think there's a little bit of an asterisk because you just have to see how, the coaching process, the coaching change, how that all plays out. And if it's doesn't end up with Mickey being here, that could, put this back into question, and some other teams could pounce because it doesn't take long, for stuff to change in recruiting.
And you mentioned the impact that his commitment has on this class. According to the 24/7 Sports rankings, Nebraska went from 176.17 team recruiting points to 191.50 recruiting points as far as the 2023 class goes. So that swung the pendulum quite a bit for this Nebraska 2023 recruiting class. And truthfully, I think Mickey will be here in some capacity. I don't think Malachi Coleman commits here unless there's some sort of reassurance that Mickey will be here. And yeah, there's the possibility of the new coaching staff, and yeah, there's a possibility that a hypothetical new coaching staff could bring in their own guys. But to me, I just think this signifies that Mickey is staying with the program in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can read that into it. I mean, I think it's in his contract, and I think he's told Malachi that, and I think, he's as comfortable at Nebraska as anywhere else. But I don't think, I just don't think that there's anything, more you can really read into it. I just think it's, he's trusting, what it is right now. But if there's another coach that comes in and wants an entirely new staff, I mean, you're not. Trev Alberts isn't going to say no to that, I guess, is the thing. if you hire a new head coach and he doesn't want Mickey Joseph on the staff, then he's not going to be on the staff. And Malachi Coleman and all that's not going to matter. So, I mean, I think that they're obviously going to take that into consideration. And I do think that Mickey's going to be back in one way or another. But I don't think this commitment necessarily makes it more certain one way or the other. That's just my view on it. I just know that crazy things happen. And you never know. Mickey might get, he might get pissed off that if he doesn't get the head coaching job. I mean, it doesn't seem like that, but there's just a lot of things that still have to play out before signing day. And I'm just not convinced that another program isn't going to come and make a hard push for him, because like Georgia and some of these other schools didn't really make as hard of a push as they could have. And once things get closer to signing day, teams are, running out of commitments and they're, missing on different targets. I'm still afraid that somebody else is going to come back and make a push. And if Nebraska struggles in these next, 4 or 5 games, I think that's going to make it easier for opponents to do that.
And like we said before, this slate of games coming up is not exactly the most friendly batch of games, but we'll have to see how this all plays out coming off the bye week. First up is Illinois, and it's going to be a wild last couple weeks of the season here. I can't believe we're saying the last couple weeks. It feels like we just started.
Yeah, 5-week stretch starting with Illinois, who is his sole first place in the Big Ten West. So I mean, if Nebraska does win this game, I mean, I know that still sounds crazy, but I think that they would be tied again with Illinois, or maybe one game back. Illinois might be 4-1.
Tied. I'm not 100% certain. I think they're tied.
Well, I think Illinois. Yeah, I'd have to look at their schedule. I want to say they might be 4-1 in the Big Ten because they played an early game. But at any rate, they would be tied with 2 losses because Purdue lost yesterday to Wisconsin on the road. So and that
Wisconsin made Purdue look bad.
That shows Wisconsin, still it's going to be a tough team, but it's like I kind of said before, actually in a different website, I predicted that Wisconsin would beat Purdue because, mediocre teams are somewhat good at home. Mediocre teams are usually bad on the road and pretty good at home. And, so it didn't shock me that Wisconsin went to Michigan State and kind of played like crap and then came at home and Camp Randall and beat Purdue. It makes me think that Purdue's not that good of a team, not as good as maybe we thought that they were. So it looks like in the Big Ten West, it's really all for, Illinois to take because Minnesota just got drubbed by Penn State last night. So, I don't know, it's going to be interesting, but I think Nebraska, the schedule, I think there's definitely 3 wins out there. If the Nebraska can play the way that they have over the last 3 games, I mean, in totality, I know the defense wasn't great against Purdue, but you can't put them out there for 102 plays. I mean, you just can't do that. So they've got to figure some things out. I'm hoping, I don't know what they're going to do during the bye week with the offensive line, but
they're not. It is what it is.
The thing about it though is if Nebraska only ends up, say they end up 4-8, I mean that's worrisome because I don't think Mickey is going to have any shot in hell at being the head coach in that situation.
I mean, I agree. I think at that point you kind of have to take a look at a new staff, but I do think there are some winnable games here. Illinois, I still think is winnable. Iowa, I think is definitely winnable, although their defense is insane and is probably going to eat our offensive line for breakfast. But I do think there are some winnable games, but it'll be interesting to see how this affects Malachi Coleman's commitment and also how Malachi Coleman's commitment affects the rest of in-state recruiting because there are a lot of talented kids coming up. And so I'll be interested to see how that all plays out because, one of the biggest gripes is that, the program has not been able to keep talent in state. And, this Coleman commitment was a big one for that reason. And now we'll have to see if that leads to more commitments coming down the road here.
Yeah, it's, if Nebraska, I think, has a chance to get 7 of the top 10 in the class this year, if Mason Goldman ends up committing, which I think he's going to after Mickey offered him. He's the number 10th ranked player in the class right now, offensive tackle. He's 6'5", I believe. He was recruited as a defensive lineman before, but now I think it's kind of open either way. He's one of those guys that you evaluate as a senior. He's kind of leveled up in his play. So he definitely, I think he's only got like another 1 or 2 Power 5 offers. So Nebraska's definitely the favorite there as long as they can close the deal. That gives you, I think 7 of the top 10 guys, Maverick Noonan is another one that's in the top 5, but there's still some talented players like Zane Flores is going to Oklahoma State this year because Nebraska just totally bungled that recruitment. Thanks, Scott Frost.
I don't know how. Well, I do know how, but I don't know how Scott Frost could even not even offer him.
But yeah, I mean, and then Mickey, they reached out to him. There was some communication, after Mickey became the head coach, but it was basically thanks, but no thanks, so it's disappointing because it's all, there were also some talks that William Watson was looking elsewhere, and, he hasn't been answering, the texts or phone calls of, Nebraska recruiting reporters, which isn't in itself a bad sign, but usually, it's kind of strange when that communication drops off. There was talk about him making a visit to Virginia Tech, but I haven't seen that that's happened yet, unless he did it really, incognito. But
No, I haven't seen that either.
Wouldn't shock me if he wasn't a part of this class. I think people just need to, kind of accept that. There's still a chance to change it. Mickey could still save it, but it might be a situation where Nebraska doesn't take a quarterback, in the 2023 class. So I mean, that's just where it is.
On the assumption that maybe Casey comes back for next year?
I don't think it has anything to do with Casey. I just think that if they lose William Watson, there's no other quarterback to get in this class. That's what
I'm not. I'm not necessarily worried about losing Casey. It's just that what would we do? I mean, we do have Chuba, but is he ready?
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think he's going to have to be if Thompson's not, or they'll just have to go back to the portal. I think Nebraska's really going to have to, hit up the transfer portal hard. They recruited the Daniel Kalen in 2024, but they just offered another quarterback in 2024. So, I'm not sure what's happening there, but really, Scott Frost. In the last 5 years, they've literally never hit on a quarterback recruit at all. So it's totally barren, the position. I mean, Logan Smothers is still there. I mean, he could maybe compete or be a backup, but I just think they have to keep going to the transfer portal. But I don't think that Casey Thompson's NFL material. So, I think it would be better for him to come back for another season. I'll just say that.
Yeah, assuming that if the line gets fixed, because if the line doesn't get fixed, I wouldn't blame him for putting his name. Honestly, testing the waters to see if he can go into the NFL. But you bring up a good point about trying to maybe get another quarterback out of the portal. Now that we've seen, guys like Trey Palmer and a guy like Anthony Grant, like players that we were able to get from the portal and even junior college ranks in Grant. This is certainly a notch in the belt for Nebraska because they can say, oh, we did this with Trey Palmer, and now we can help you and help you get to that next level as well. So I'll be interested to see what they do in the portal this year, just based off of their success with what they've had so far at this point in the season.
Yeah, and that's why it's important that, by December 5th or 6th or whenever the portal opens, Nebraska has a head coach for next season. Whether it's Mickey Joseph or whether that's somebody else, but Trev Alberts in that week after the Iowa game, if Nebraska's made a bowl game, then it's probably just going to be Mickey. If not, then he needs to go make a hire within that week. There is not time to mess around here. This roster needs dramatic changes in the transfer portal. There's time limits in the transfer portal now. You can only do it, there's certain windows. So, this move has to be made quickly. And I hope that Trev Alberts knows that. I think that he does, but, that's why there probably is going to be some back channel negotiation. If they're going to make a run at like a Dave Aranda or Lane Kiffin or somebody, like it needs to happen that Monday after, the last weekend of the college football season, as long as, said head coach isn't playing, championship weekend, because you have to have some type of strategy in place for the portal. Nebraska legitimately needs like 5 offensive linemen, and they're probably going to need a quarterback. They might need a receiver to, they're going to need some reinforcements, definitely some pass rushers. This roster is not, it's not on a great spot, in terms of, trying to contend for the Big Ten West, which I think does make it impressive that Mickey's been able to get this team kind of back into contention. But it would be nice for him or whoever is the coach to know that by the time, at least that first, those first few days of the transfer portal window, so they can kind of have a chance at some of the better players in there.
Yeah, especially when you look at December being the early signing day, and then just beginning the process of recruiting. And
Yeah.
because it's not just about the commitments, it's all about building relationships at certain schools and things like that. And you want to have that solid foundation if you want to have depth and continuity. And I'm not saying we're going to be the next Alabama, but I'll just use them as a point of reference. Look at Alabama, look at Ohio State. They have guys, second string guys that are ready to go and ready to play if the starter gets injured. And why? Because they've worked hard to build that depth, and they've worked hard and identified the necessary positions that they've needed that depth. And it's all about building a pipeline of depth, so to speak. And Nebraska just does not have that right now. And so they'll need to, whoever the coach is, they'll need to begin to work on that quickly, whether it be via the transfer portal or establishing, strongholds in certain areas of the country.
Yeah, I think a big part of it too is making sure that you're getting your evaluations correct, and that for Nebraska, when you're recruiting three-star kids, it's even more important. Now, some people, want to talk down on three-star kids. There's a lot of three-star kids that get drafted every single year and that play a lot of NFL football. It just is a matter of, it's like, when people talk about the NFL draft, there's, not people but scouts, team analysts. They say there's a bigger difference between a first round pick and a third round pick, talent wise, right, than there is between a third round pick and a seventh round pick. So, I mean, outside of those top maybe 100 or 100, there's those elite guys in every class, which Malachi Coleman is one. And then once you get down the ranks, there's a lot of guys that can play college football. You just have to make your evaluations. Like I've said before, in certain places like Massachusetts, there's some good football players there, right? But there's not a lot of elite talent. So it could be hard to evaluate some of those kids. You have to, make some leaps of faith because in some places, kids are three stars because there's no really competition to judge them against. They get to some of these bigger camps and stuff, but so it's important for Nebraska, and that's why, Matt Campbell's had some success at Iowa State is they've been able to really, evaluate those three-star kids and find the ones that are the diamonds in the rough, so to speak. And that's what Nebraska's got to do. They've also got to get away from recruiting, 6, 7 offensive linemen. I mean, I get it. I understand why, you want some of those tall guys, but, Teddy Berjaka, to me, it's too tall, and that, I just think it makes it really easy for like a defensive end to dip around you. And it's just not there's been no recruiting strategy for like the interior offensive line. It's just weird. They're trying to get these, mammoth size guys. And I understand it. It looks good on the roster. It looks good on paper, but you need somebody that actually understands, offensive linemen and how these guys are going to play. And it's kind of like the Fred Hoiberg thing. It's like you don't have to recruit. I mean, Bryce McGowan's was a great player, but at the end of the day, he really didn't help Nebraska's basketball program out in any way, shape, or form. He came here and helped his own draft stock, but he didn't help the program really. It was a
Same
one
thing
and
with
done.
Trey.
Yeah, it just wasn't, I mean, it's just the way that you have to build the program. It would have been better, like, if you could have gotten, say, like a point guard ranked 125th or something for Nebraska and had a guy that's actually going to play for 3 years and actually like be a 2-year starter. That would have been a better long-term investment. So I mean, you do have to look at that in terms of recruiting and then basketball is obviously way different than football. So I mean, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but but Nebraska, you just have, the point is you have to evaluate talent, and I think that Mickey Joseph, is really good at that. And whoever, if he's the head coach or whoever the new head coach is, yes, you have to be able to recruit, but if you're recruiting guys that aren't living up to their star ranking, that also doesn't help either. So you do have to have that football acumen, and the staffs under Scott Frost just never had it. As you looked at, like, most of our top recruits have almost all been busts, and I know Thomas Fedoni has had injuries, and so he, the report card's still out there, but Wandale Robinson didn't work out here, worked out somebody else, but McCaffrey, Corcoran, Benhart, just like all these big name guys, and for one reason or another, they just didn't work out here. So I don't think that's going to happen with Malachi Coleman, though. I mean, it would be pretty hard not to get something out of that guy. Like I said, I mean, he's got Randy Moss type of ability. I know I'm not saying
Whoa.
that, but I mean, he
Randy
does,
Moss.
though.
No, he
He's
does.
He's 6'5", he's 190. I mean, there's only so many people in the world that are that tall and that fast. I mean, he's a big time player. And I really think that, I mean, I'm not, I don't think he's going to like have Trey Palmer's impact next season or anything, but if Trey Palmer goes to the NFL, I could definitely see Malachi taking over some of that playmaking role. I don't think he's going to lead the nation in receiving or something, but I could see him making some big plays. And he's the kind of guy that you could see having a couple of 1,000-yard seasons or 1,200-yard seasons. I mean, that's how talented this guy is.
Yeah, and when you take a look and you think about the health of the tight ends and will we see them next season? If we do, I mean, Thomas Fedoni and Carney, and I think we've seen a bit of Rollins this year. I'm not exactly too certain, but those playmakers that we've been waiting for at tight end, if they are healthy too, I mean, this offense could be really, really good. And just to kind of circle back, you said we need offensive linemen and we need to know how to develop offensive linemen. Right now, we've put ourselves in a position where we need offensive linemen ready from the portal, like right now. And it's a tough position to be in, but, we need to have right now ready offensive linemen. And that, too, could be a recruiting
Especially
point.
at tackle.
Tackle, guards, center.
I mean, I still have hope for Prajaka, because he did, when he was healthy his freshman year. He was this year. I don't think he was ever healthy. I think they kind of rushed him back. I don't think they did him any favors this year. So I think they did the right thing in saying, hey, we need to shut this guy down. But I'm interested. I still think that he at least is good enough to be a swing tackle. If he's not good enough to start, he's at least a guy you could bring off the bench. But yeah, I think they need two starting caliber quality tackles out of the transfer portal right away, and probably a third. And then they definitely need some interior guys. I mean, I do like Loftoski. He needs to be more consistent, but I think he could have starter potential. It'll be interesting to see if the suspended guy comes back, and but I think it's going to be. I think it's not going to be. It can't be that hard to find, some offensive lineman help, and especially on the interior. So you just got to get somebody who can actually knows what quality offensive line play looks like. And I really, really think, even if it's you have Donovan Raiola or another younger coach, whatever, if you don't get an experienced type, you should go pay some offensive line coach analyst that can help you recruit, for God's sakes, even if he's just breaking things down. I think that would be tremendously, valuable for Nebraska.
Absolutely, and I'll be interested to see what happens with Donovan Raiola and Mark Whipple. Who knows if this is his only season at Nebraska or not? But
Raiola's got to do something over these last. I mean, I know these guys aren't talented, but there's got to be a way to get them playing better. I mean, I'm not saying great. I'm just saying go from terrible to less terrible. I mean, there's got to be some sort of improvement. So
I don't see it with these lines coming up. I really, really don't.
I gave
Especially
up
against
after
Michigan.
Purdue,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, it was like so I kept writing these blocks, and I'm like 2 or 3 games in a row. I'm like, well, they can't get any worse, and then they get worse. So I'm like, okay, never mind. I'm going to officially stop saying that. It was like, but
Well, no, it's like these guys are dating the opposing defensive line, holding their hands and leaning them to Casey Thompson. It's like, geez, just hug them and
but
make out already, because clearly you're not protecting your quarterback.
and there's a lot of I played offensive line. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but it doesn't look like the technique is that. Like, I really feel like if you got a technician in there, you do a really good job in this. There's like Ed Warner. I brought his name up before. He used
Ohio
to be
State.
Ohio State OC, and he actually coached at Michigan, and that's where Michigan's O line was kind of in a similar situation. They really struggled. They were like really low in terms of like sacks and run yards and stuff like that. They brought him in, and like the very next year with a lot of the same players, and drastically improved things. And he's not a great recruiter. He's not, he's an old school, coach. He's an old school offensive line coach. But the thing is that Nebraska, that with the talent you have, that's the kind of coach that you need, not somebody, Raiola's still out here. I mean, I like some of their offers, but in 2024, they keep offering like these top 100 guys, and they're like already they're like USC leans. It's like, dude, I don't know what you're thinking. That guy's not going to probably ever come to Nebraska's campus. Like, you're just wasting your effort here.
And also, you mentioned Ed Warner. Josh Gaddis can also thank Ed Warner because I think Ed Warner was a big reason why Gaddis won the Broyles Award. Gaddis is awful down in Miami right now. But anyway, I just had to add that in there because I'm feeling feisty. It's early in the morning, so I have energy.
But
And
yeah, well, yeah, Josh. So Warner left Michigan. So Sharon Moore is the guy you're thinking of, though. He was the offensive line coach for Michigan last year.
gotcha.
But yeah, Josh Gaddis definitely is not. So he came to Michigan, was trying to bring the speed and space offense. This was after. So in 2018, Michigan went to Ohio State and thought they were gonna like run them over and got their asses kicked like 60-30.
I remember that game.
Yeah, and then they tried to go to the spread offense with Gaddis, and it was just a total disaster. And then so what happened last year? Gaddis. There's a bunch of issues with him. There's a reason he left Michigan. Basically, they told him even if Jim Harbaugh left, he wasn't even going to be a candidate to replace him, and he got pissed off about that. That's why he left. And there's reasons for that. I don't want to talk about, but he's got some other issues going on in his personal life. But at the same time, basically it was Jim Harbaugh's offense. I mean, he kind of took over the offense, and Josh Gaddis got credit for it. As you can see now, he's not a great offensive coordinator.
And, that was thought to be a big hire by Miami, and I liked the hire by Miami at the time. I also do some writing for Miami for those who don't know. And, they're not happy with him in Coral Gables right now. But
Hey, maybe they can hire our guy Scott Frost.
I mean, honestly, that wouldn't be the worst because I think I think
I do
Frost
think
is a good
Frost is a
offensive
good.
mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a good player. He just needs to. Okay, I think someday maybe he could still be a good head coach if he can learn, like if he can legitimately learn from his lessons and take a hard look at, like, maybe I shouldn't be, drinking on the job when I'm trying to meet with recruits, or maybe, if I'm on the hot seat and I have a team meeting, I probably should be there. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
just stuff like, but on a serious level, I mean, like, not every head coach. I mean, like, Bill Belichick failed miserably when he was with the Cleveland Browns, but he learned from it. He took some humble pie and he came back and he approached his second job differently. So I mean, there's a lot of head coaches. It's like that next one, and some of them are a lot better after they get fired, and some of them they
Nick
use
Saban,
it to get
except in reverse.
yeah. Some of them though they use their pass to get another retread job, and then they suck even worse the next time, and then you
Although
never hear from them again.
I said Nick Saban, but he coached with Belichick in Cleveland, and then I was thinking Nick Saban from Miami to Alabama because I
I
think
guess he didn't really get fired, but he kind of
no, but I mean
he saw the writing on the wall though.
It definitely worked out for him, I'd say. So
I mean, I think he saw, if he would have, that's the thing is if he would have got Drew Brees, if they would have approved the Drew Brees, because the Miami doctor failed the signing, wouldn't let him sign Drew Brees. I mean, if he would have found a quarterback, then it might have worked out. But he had Dante Culpepper who tore his ACL, and then you can't win in the NFL without a quarterback. That's why everybody wants to like rip on Matt Rule and say he's a terrible coach. And I'm not saying that I don't have questions about him, but it's like, have you checked who's been playing quarterback for the Carolina Panthers? It doesn't matter who you are. Vince Lombardi couldn't win with that team. I mean, that's just the way it is.
No, and I think
I don't think Matt Rule's coming to Nebraska.
No, I don't either.
Texas A&M maybe. Here's a scenario for you though. Now say, because one coach, I think if Dave Aranda came to Nebraska, I definitely think slam dunk Mickey's back. So say that Nebraska hires Dave Aranda, pays all this fancy money. What would you do if you're Baylor? I'd call Matt Rule back up. Hey, you want to come back at like twice the salary? How funny would that be?
Yeah, no, that would make the most sense because isn't a large part of Aranda's success from guys that Rule recruited?
Yeah, I mean,
Didn't Rule establish the foundation? Like, let's look at this as a house. Didn't Rule establish the foundation, so to speak, there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think you could say that. I mean, he took them to the Big 12 championship game, and then they had a good bowl game, and then he left. But yeah, I would say that's fair.
Yeah, no, and so I'll be interested to see. And
I like Dave Aranda though. I love Dave Aranda.
And this has nothing to do with Malachi Coleman commitment takeaways, so feel free to pause or whatever at this point, but you got our football minds going, and now we can't stop. I'll be interested to see, where is Joe Brady? Is he even coaching? Because at one point he was one of the hottest names on the market. Now, I
I
know
want
he
to
was with Carolina.
say, yeah, I think he's somewhere in the NFL, but
Oh, let me
yeah,
look. I know
offensive
he was with
coordinator.
Carolina.
I mean, people were talking about him as he messed up. He should
Mark
have
Chase,
stayed
Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like,
because
I'd look good too.
yeah, I mean, I think if he would have stayed in college, like he probably would have had a chance to be a college head coach. And now he's got I still think he could be. I would like that dude as like, say if they hired Aranda and they wanted him as the offensive coordinator, bring back the LSU band, so to speak.
Quarterbacks coach for the Buffalo Bills, Joe Brady is. And
They can
again,
even
you
they
have
can even
Josh
bring
Allen.
in
Like, how hard is
hell,
that?
hell, man. I mean, Coach O's not doing anything. Bring in Coach O to coach the D line. Coach Ed Orgeron, man.
I think he's working in some capacity with Miami because
Oh
I
yeah,
know his son is some sort of assistant on the Miami staff or something. So
I
I
love
think
Coach O.
he's great. And,
I love I love when they were talking about the buyout and they're like, we're gonna pay you $30 million to leave. And he's all, okay.
I'd take that in a heartbeat. I think LSU regrets that now, especially with that clown Kelly and taking
Man, they
over
just
their.
got a big win yesterday. They beat number 7 Ole Miss, though.
I mean, yeah, but
Which helps us, I kind of feel
Brian
like.
Kelly always gets that one victory, but he's never able to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that, but he did win a lot of, I mean, you have to give, he won a lot of games at Notre Dame. I mean, it's as
He won a lot
annoying
of
as
Notre
he is.
Dames because they played Holy Cross and I don't know, Morehead State and had no conference and they
I
won a
mean,
lot
yeah,
of
I see it.
games.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, of course they won a lot of games. That he's just so fake to me. He embarrasses Worcester,
He
Massachusetts
is an
on the
embarrassment.
daily.
His dancing is horrible.
His dancing and his southern accent.
Oh my God, that's so stupid. Please just stop it, Brian Kelly. My God.
But yeah, I mean, I'd win a
but
lot of games if I played nobody too.
but Lane Kiffin though, we gave Lane Kiffin a loss. So I mean, now I feel like I don't know. I mean, Sipple says that Lane Kiffin's realistic. I believe if Sipple says it, I believe it. That's basically how I've always
You know
operated,
what?
like the last 20 years of him being on the beat.
I believe it too because I haven't really heard anything about him. I believe that we're not going to hear a lot about the next head coaching candidate. I mean, aside from maybe Mickey Joseph because he's obviously interim now, but I could see our head coaching candidate flying under the radar.
Yeah, for sure. This is how I kind of look at it, right? I think Mickey is right there. He's got to go 3-2. If Mickey goes 3-2, he's the next head coach. That's my opinion. If that doesn't happen, I think Dave Aranda and Kiffin are both in play, and then I still think Lance Leopold is in play. And I
A
don't know.
little shaky lately, but they
Yeah,
lost their
but
starting quarterback.
yeah, and it's
So
Kansas. It's still
yeah,
Kansas. Like you gotta. I'm still not. I mean, I get the Matt Campbell thing because now they've had another bad. That you're not going to be able to sell that to fans, and it is going to be hard. With if Leopold doesn't get Kansas to a bowl game, but I think if he does that, I would still take him. I mean, not as my number one choice per se. I really would like Lane Kiffin, but I still like Mickey Joseph. Any of those top three guys, Mickey, Lane, or Dave Aranda, that's my top three.
yeah, that sounds like a solid top three. I think Leopold has kind of dropped out a little bit. I wouldn't mind him. Like
Yeah,
I've said, and I'll maintain it here. The only coach who I'd absolutely want to jump out the window and say no to is Bill O'Brien, and all the rest I would definitely be happy with.
I know, and he still seems to be trending up. Sipple's always mentioning him, and apparently him and Trev have some connections. So,
If that
I mean,
happens, I'll be very angry, and you'll hear me screaming on this show for quite a while after he's hired. And you can just leave, and I'll just scream to all the people that watch this, and that will be that. I can vet, and you can just leave me to vet because I'm not gonna be happy.
yeah, I mean, he's not my first choice, but I'll come around eventually. But we'll see. I just don't think he would be the best hire, but I don't know, man. Texas A&M might have an opening at some point, and they might. He seems like someone they would try to go after. Like, oh, we can't beat Alabama. Let's just take one of their assistants. I don't know. I feel like Matt Rule would go there too, or if I was Deion Sanders, that's where I would go. I would leave Jackson State and go to Texas A&M.
I think he wants to. I think Sanders wants to stay in the South and like the warmer climates. So that would make sense. Quite honestly, I don't blame him. It's freezing up here, but um, yeah. I mean, a lot of pieces still in play. A lot of moving parts. I'm curious to figure out how many people can follow these plane trackers. I see plane tracker tweets
Yeah.
all the time, and I'm curious to see how people. Well, I know how people find them, but damn, like you got to be on some sleuth work type of stuff. To
I don't know what it means, but
I don't know what it
hope
means, but it's fun to dream.
hopefully, though, I think the best case scenario, honestly, is just we get to a bowl game, name Mickey the head coach, let him hire the best staff as possible, and keep this momentum rolling forward. So
That's what I want.
hopefully,
Yeah,
hopefully that's what happens. This Malachi Coleman commitment is a big deal, though. He's a big time player. I'm super happy for him. He's a great kid. I don't believe any of the rumors out there. I see him signing kids' autographs all the time. So I believe he's going to be a warrior for Nebraska. And, I'm super stoked that he comes here. I hope Nebraska does not screw this up some way. And, not having Mickey Joseph on the staff, that's always in the back of my mind because it's Nebraska and they like to screw things up. But
I don't think they will. The coaching circle is very small, and there's only so
I
many
know.
coaches for a job, and I think it's
You'd
pretty
have to be,
clear.
like I've said, like
Yeah,
20 times, you'd have to be a moron not to keep Mickey Joseph, even as an assistant. So
it's pretty clear that Mickey Joseph is pretty damn good at what he does. So
watch Nebraska hire Bill O'Brien and then he fires Mickey Joseph.
don't even say that. Don't even say that.
That would be
No,
horrible.
no, don't even
Only
say that.
only he's dumb enough to do that. That would be a bad sign. So
What if
either way,
we hired Mickey Joe? What if Mickey Joseph's head coach he hires Bill O'Brien for offensive coordinator or something?
yeah, or Joe Brady, and he can hire his brother as the defensive
I
coordinator.
honestly wouldn't mind either of those, Joe Brady or Bill O'Brien as offensive coordinator,
I also
because
wouldn't. I also wouldn't mind Whipple being back. I don't hate Whipple so far. I just think give him an offensive line and some more talent, and I think it would be better.
okay, this is something that I kind of want to address, and I know this is far from Malachi Coleman, and we're at 42 minutes, but this is what you get with us. People hate. There's a large faction of fans that don't like Whipple and don't like his play calling. And
Yeah,
I don't have really any complaints. Sure, are some of the calls questionable at times? Yeah, but we're putting up a lot of points per game. And the reason why we're losing is because of the offensive line and the defense. Like if Casey had time to throw and receivers had time to run their routes and Casey had time to get the ball, it's a whole lot different. I mean, Whipple hasn't done a bad job at all in comparison to Matt Lubick, who I can't even believe, looking back on it now, was actually the offensive coordinator
yeah,
for us at one point in time. Like, that's crazy to me. And I
yeah,
liked the hire at the time, but clearly it didn't work. So I don't really
yeah.
understand all the Whipple slander. I don't like. He's doing a
And
good job. It's just I don't know.
I mean, it's an easy target. It's anytime a play doesn't work, it's just easy to say, oh, the play call was bad. So I feel like they're just easy targets, but the offense is much better. I mean, yeah, I wish at times the time of possession or whatever was better, but you mean in the Purdue game? I mean, there wasn't what are you going to do? Turn away a 70-yard touchdown? It's just the way that it worked out. That every time Nebraska found a way to score, it was because Trey Palmer got like a
Right.
60-yard play. So I mean, I don't see that as and those are small. Those are things that you can figure out. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, he's coached a team. He coached Pittsburgh to an ACC championship. He can coach Nebraska as an offensive coordinator to a division title, a Big Ten title.
And
So
now the quarterback's in the NFL, Kenny Pickett. So I mean,
yeah.
the results are there. I really don't have a problem with Whipple. I
And
do
then
wish
you
he
look
would
at
run the ball more, but I mean, he's far better than Matt Lubick.
yeah.
I'll say that.
And I mean, hey, he was. I mean, when Anthony Grant, when it was working, I mean, he was getting close to 20 carries. So, I mean, he did show some flashes of it. It's just Nebraska hasn't been able to do it outside of North Dakota and kind of the
Better
crappy
defensive
teams.
lines,
So, I
better
mean,
defensive lines,
and Anthony
and
Grant did get a lot of carries against Indiana. So, I mean, I got to give him credit for that, I guess.
better defensive lines, and our offensive line is going to get really exposed. And I don't think that's going to change over the next couple of weeks. Honestly, I just hope that the
No,
quarterbacks
probably
can
not.
stay healthy.
But at the same time, Iowa has a terrible offensive line. Minnesota doesn't look that great. Illinois is really good. I mean,
Iowa's
Illinois,
defense is really good, though.
yeah, I mean, you're right about that. But I still think they're not as their pass rush isn't as good though. I mean,
True.
their defense is really good, and their run defense is good, but they don't have like that one pass rusher that we can't block. I'll say, that doesn't mean all four of their guys won't kick our ass, but I think those are winnable. I think every home game is winnable for sure. And I think so I really think 4 out of the 5. I don't know. I just have a feeling Nebraska is going to make that Michigan game somewhat close, but yeah, Casey might get murdered that day.
I feel like the Michigan game, in my opinion, is the only one where it might not be close, only because Casey won't have time to throw. But I do think the others that Nebraska has a legitimate shot. And
Yeah, I do too. I definitely, especially at home because Wisconsin's not great. I mean, and they're coming to Nebraska. I think that it all depends, man. If they win this game Saturday, they beat Illinois, Nebraska's going to a bowl game. I guarantee it. That's all I'll
ooh,
say.
okay, I like it. I mean, the stars are lining up, but if there's one thing I learned about Nebraska football, it's never to guarantee anything, because we've
Yeah,
been preseason champions for like 4 years in a row now, and we've all
I
seen
know.
how that worked out.
But yeah, I do think, and the stars do feel like they're aligning. We need a win. We need a win over a ranked team, and it would be freaking awesome. I would love it. So, I think we'll wrap it up from there because we'll have some more on Illinois coming up here, and if we get down that rabbit hole, then we'll be here for another hour. So, we'll cut this short here. But as we said, huge commitment for Nebraska. It's a big one for Mickey Joseph. So thank you, Mickey. Everybody in Nebraska should like send you some flowers or cake or something. And if you want to check out some more of our thoughts here on this, you can check out my website, huskerbigred.com, the greatcornholio.org, where Danny's got all of his content. Make sure that you like this video, get into the comments section and also subscribe to our channel because we're going to have a lot more Nebraska content coming up, especially with basketball season coming. It's a busy time to be a Husker fan,
Sunday,
but
today's an exhibition game, I believe, the opener.
Yep. And I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on them. So pretty soon we're going to have a basketball video out, but we will be back soon with our Illinois preview, and we'll have some more content out this week. So for myself and Danny, as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.